I will quote one of the most renowned Islamic intellectuals who was called Al-Ghazali. He discussed some of the potential disadvantages of marriages. Among these, he included the possibility of excessive financial burden on a family, or that people might become engrossed within the enjoyment on needs and family, and thereby they become distracted from the true purpose of life, which is the individual journey to Allah. Marriage, like many lawful things in Islam, if approached correctly, is an opportunity for growing closer to God. However, if it is approached as an end in itself, it can become destructive. As always, I'm your host with the most. They call me Timothy, and this is just a podcast. Say thank you for all of you, for everybody who has contributed to see the success of just a podcast on all the social media handles. Manze, I mean, the love that you're showing me out there, I've never really gotten such love. But I just want to say thank you. You've been a nice audience. And today we are handling the 4th episode of just a podcast as we talk about African sexuality, And today we are talking about sexual rights and health reproductive rights. So, rights are merely the codification of needs reformulated as ethical and legal norms, and thus implying a duty on the part of the people in power to provide all the means necessary to make sure that those needs are met. The terminology of human and universal simply means that there should be no distinction between class or gender or race or ethnicity or age or religion and so forth. The rights or these rights belong to everybody, and the duties to fulfill these rights are to the authorities and to individuals. In short, we are trying to say that these rights are meaningless, in other words, without needs, but the needs cannot stand on their own as ethical principles because they lack any intrinsic method. For example, if we determine whose and which needs should be the first ones, or we assign the obligations to specific parties for fulfilling those needs and duties, or we empower those whose needs are at stake to speak for themselves. While in Africa, this is the biggest recipient of aid globally, in terms, conditions, and principles upon which aid is conceived and delivered are not defined by the people of Africa. So today, as we are tackling the African sexuality, we are simply here to talk about the SRHR rights. And mostly, it's interesting because as I was doing my research, I stumbled upon this article that talks about the African sexuality in the Islamic perspective. And here it's what it said, mostly to deal with family planning. In addressing the question of family planning from an Islamic perspective, it is necessary to consult various sources of guidance within the religious tradition, which include the Quranic revelation and prophetic traditions, as well as other inner moral capacity of discernment in human beings. Islam is a religion of ease and not of hardship, so the Quran says. Moderation is recommended to approach in life. Thus, large families in the context of a limited access to resources often impose difficulties to the provider. Here are some points talking about sexuality in Islamic. 1. In Islam, there is a prioritization of quality of life rather than a large quantity of lives. Planned spacing of pregnancies will allow the mother the time and opportunity to suckle and care for each child. The Quran recommends that a mother should suckle her child for 2 years. Undernourished and weak offsprings are more a source of anxiety and struggle than the comfort or allurement of the parents' eyes, as the Quran intends. In Muslim countries that are underdeveloped, they have limited resources and overpopulated. An absence of family planning will result in a weak multitude, enduring more hardships instead of a smaller but stronger and healthier population. In this chapter, I draw a number of traditional Islamic resources in delineating a more self-referential and less defensive Islamic approach to the questions of family planning, contraception, and abortion. I may tend to discuss a diverse Islamic legacy with varying approaches to the questions of family planning. As we explore the Islamic perspectives on family planning, contraception, and abortion, it is necessary to understand that some of these fundamentals of Islam that inform such ideas, they begin by discussing some of the essential Islamic teachings about God and humanity, which they form the basis of Islamic approach to addressing ethical concern and contemporary challenges of population growth, family planning, and human well-being. I may argue that the central Islamic concept of human moral agency, which is called Khilafah, it demands that we address these challenges holistically, which includes a response to structural injustices relating to economical and gender hierarchies, as well as informed approach to particulars of family planning. The belief of oneness or unity of God, known to Muslims as the principle of Tawheed, is the center from which the rest of Islam radiates. As we are continuing to talk about the African sexuality in the Islamic perspective, I'd really love for any Muslim out there listening to this podcast, I'd love for them to clarify more whether I'm in the right lane or in the wrong lane, so as not to offend someone unknowingly. Maybe this article that I researched and now I'm using it as a read podcast, maybe it was written under bias, you never know. So I'd really love for you to comment on the comment section and leave your opinions there. So as we continue to talk about the sexism and gender justice, another pivotal area of concern which relates to Islamic perspective on gender relations, marriage, and their implications for family planning. The notion is that God's unity is reflected in the equality and unity of mankind, which provides a basis for strong critique of sexism and gender hierarchy. Contemporary contraceptive methods that are temporarily avert pregnancy are analog to the Islamically sanctioned practice of coitus interruptions, and thus they are permissible. Sterilization or any type of contraceptive that would cause permanent infertility are impermissible unless there are exceptional reasons. People should not be coerced to stop childbearing. I want to give thanks and shout outs to everybody out there mwenye amekuwa tuned into this podcast. As usual, this is African sexuality, and today we were focusing more on the Islamic perspective on African sexuality, on matters to deal with abortion, contraceptives, and family planning. Okay, as I said earlier, I'd love for a few of my Muslim friends, or those who are not my friends, to give me their insights and their opinions about what I've just said. Maybe I've digressed a bit, but anyway, leave your comments on the comment section below, and I guess I'll see you in the next session, which will be our 6th episode. I want to say thank you, and this is me signing out. Just a pod to the world.